So here we are. You can see my screen.
Yes, Dr. Nami, you are good.
Okay.
We can see.
Okay. So I want to start with a question about what is the basis of a clinical decision or a client-facing decision that a health practitioner trained in Ayurveda makes today. And when I was thinking about this, I see that our suggestions stem from traditional text references, experience with mentors, experience with our own clients as we become more mature, some self-experience, and maybe some clinical trials studies, if at all we've read something that has come along the way. So this is the basis, I feel, and more, and you can suggest anything more that you might be using, that we might be using. The proportions of this change for everyone as they go along in their journey, but this is mostly the starting point. When we think about it that way, we realize that being informed from more contemporary understanding and contemporary field data, the information that generates from that is not available to us easily. We are not able to access it easily to make better clinical suggestions. So therefore, that is one of the most critical purpose of research in Ayurveda that we need to conduct today. If I lay it out, is the research really an exercise of an ivory tower academic pursuit? I say that it is not, because it really has the ability to really put Ayurveda at a different pedestal if we use it right, if we steer it right, if we use the tools and the framework right. Because what it can do, it can equip Vaidyas and healers with new age support to make clinical decisions. It can address unsolved human health challenges, because clearly medicine and health is in shambles today, as we all know about it. And it can do that with emphatic data-backed interventions. We can also hopefully evolve Ayurvedic texts with the same spirit of inquiry that has brought Ayurveda to this day and age. We can also unburden practitioners of Ayurveda with legal threats and generate financial momentum for their passionate services. So these are some of the high-level ideals and the high-level outreach with research. What I'm going to share today has been inspired from the legacy of my mentor, Dr. Ashok Vaidya, who is an MD, PhD, a clinical pharmacologist. He comes from a family of Vaidyas. He had been a research director at Novartis and he was studying modern drugs, but he used the entire infrastructure to also study parallelly Ayurvedic interventions. And he always did it in an integrative mode. He was very humble to be able to sit at the feet of the Vaidyas, and he was also able to question them and challenge them about the things that they were not able to see. And I have seen him do this on both sides of the dialogue for the modern medical fields, modern medical experts also. So my 5 to 7 years of internship, my apprenticeship with him, where I interacted with many other people who would come to meet him, has led me to put together this talk today. He used this slide which says that there are two ways to slide through life. You can either believe everything or you can doubt everything. And these are the two bipolar worldviews that you see for Ayurveda, right? You have absolute belief or you have disbelief. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. And research is something that is going to help us identify that. So Ayurveda, so when we take the statement of Alfred Korbisky, you can say that, okay, Ayurveda is a Shastra, I neither doubt it or investigate its verity. Or you can say Ayurveda is an ancient vestige, either forget it or ridicule its relevance. Or you can say that Ayurveda is a rich heritage to live healthily, happily, and long, apply the tools and the techniques and the theories of life sciences to create opportunities for health. How do we do that? Now, the current way and the current models for research that you see, they are the current way of thinking holds RCTs, which are the randomized controlled clinical trials, to be one of the highest ways of doing studies. It's considered to be a gold standard. And the desirable outcome in the sample that you see, if it is repeated frequently, it becomes statistically significant at something called as P lesser than 0.05. Whenever the data reaches the P lesser than 0.05 significance, the researchers are happy because they have a positive intervention that seems to be working more than the compared model. When these kind of RCTs are repeated frequently, what you go towards is a systematic review, and then you're able to find creme de la creme, the meta-analysis and the gold standard, which is the meta-analysis. When something is true in a meta-analysis, there is an assumption that it must also be true for the population because it has been repeated frequently. So frequently, the outcome has been positive. Okay. So this is the current way of thinking, and this is where all of the research tends to get accrued. I have oversimplified this, and I understand the math is much more intense and very complicated and very refined and sophisticated as well. But this is the simple way of perceiving it. Now, this p-value has been put up as a question mark by no one other than the American Statistical Association. In the memo in 2016, there was a point number 5 that said a p-value or statistical significance does not measure the size of an effect or the importance of a result. Then what does it do? Why are we really holding it to be the highest level of significance? In that memo, in that description, it's also written, I'm reading verbatim, that let us be clear, nothing in the ASA statement is new. Statisticians and others have been sounding the alarm about these matters for decades to little avail. We hope that the statement from the world's largest professional association of statisticians would open a fresh discussion and draw renewed and vigorous attention to changing the practice of science with regards to the use of statistical inference. To me, this is profound because we are trying to go the same way the world has been going, but the pure scientists, the statisticians who are the pure mathematicians, they themselves are questioning that, hey, you're using our tool wrong. So what does Ayurveda need to do? Should we also follow them and waste time to do the same thing, or should we be doing something different? Dr. Vaidya said another level of this study, when you go from beyond the statistical inference, Dr. Vaidya used to say that, hey, in your study design itself, what you're assuming that are confounding variables that get distributed in the randomization process, they themselves are the determining factors for Ayurvedic treatment. Are you considering those while you're designing your studies? And yes, there has been a lot of hue and cry and a lot of need for doing non-randomized controlled trials for Ayurveda, but I'm yet to see trials that actually put in the Ayurvedic determinants as a part of their study design, even if they follow the current trial methodology. So can we incorporate these in the design of the clinical studies, both in the premise and in the analysis? Now we take another step of a dimension where we see what happens in deriving new age medical science information. What we are focusing on and calling scientific is been a high bias towards deductive reasoning, which is extremely popular, where you have a theory, then you generate a hypothesis, you make certain observations, and you have a confirmation. So it is from the universe you are going in and zeroing in on a part. This is opposed to something called as inductive reasoning, which until now has always been seen as iffy science, but is regaining a lot of value in the current context, in the current conversations which are occurring for statistics and medical analysis, medical and health analysis. Inductive reasoning uses observations from nature. It tries to identify patterns, and it generates a tentative hypothesis, and then it tries to create a theory from it. So it goes from observation to theory. So these are different processes which can add value to what we are doing in the field today, such that the medical infrastructure that we have created, they are not practicing isolated defensive forms of medicine. They are not double-blinded, but they are multiple visioned. And how do we get to that? So we need to move from a frequentist model of statistics. Frequentist is what is the repetitive analysis that you say that, oh, I see this outcome. Oh, this is also true. This is also true. And since it is occurring so many times, therefore it must be true. From that model, we need to move on to also the Bayesian statistics. And the Bayesian statistics is based on inductive reasoning, which allows us to make observations and create patterns and have prior understanding or prior knowledge on the basis of which we are going to be able to make future decisions. So what is Bayesian statistics? It starts with existing or prior beliefs. If you see this graph, it's just a simplistic demonstration of if an effect looks like that in the prior belief, then you run an experiment and you say, oh, the posterior belief, posterior evidence is like this, posterior observation is like this, therefore the evidence now stands at this corrected graph. So there is a way in which you can continuously update your knowledge on the basis of your observations in the field. I would suggest, if anybody is interested, I would suggest this blog that I found to explain it very simply and very nicely. So Soumik wrote a paper, Dr. Soumik Raha. He wrote a paper in JAME, and I was that time on the editorial board of JAME, and I got his paper 10 years ago in 2010. And he wrote a critique of the statistical hypothesis testing in clinical research. JAME is the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. And after the critique, he wrote another paper for the foundational principles for classical Ayurveda research to reinstate how Ayurveda had its mode of truth finding. And how are we going to do that today? Can we replicate that engine? So he helped to put the Ayurvedic principles again in a different context, such that we are able to value the ancient methods of truth finding and not be completely steered towards what is popular in Western and contemporary models today. Dr. Soumik Raha is an independent researcher. He's done his PhD in decision analysis, an amazing tool which is based on the Bayesian models and he uses this for very high impact predictions to make in the field. because even in the non-medical setting, people are moving away from the current trend analysis and frequent statistical models to predict. So for everyone who is here, I'm assuming that you are very well acquainted with Ayurveda, but I want to reinstate and remind us that what the circular process of the pramanas did to help steer learning. So there were observations and field experiments that were there in Pratyaksh. From that, the Aptas derived certain authoritative statements, and there was a very detailed process in which they created unbiased statements with truth value that we could apply anywhere, and they hold true even today. So the Apta created frameworks for us to see and observe reality and create our own experience with it. So the dosha theory and all of those are some of the frameworks that the Aptas created so that we could function on a day-to-day basis. There were also inferences that arose out of Anuman, and Anuman were doing the causative, correlative, associative studies. And then Yukti put all of this information together and used it in a certain process, and there was an observation of the outcome. And that observation, that learning from that observation would help to create the new plans and update our own knowledge about the system. Now, these aspects are occurring in individual minds, but how is it that we are going to do it in our collective mind of Ayurveda? How do we use the modern age tools to steer this collective mind frames, mind spaces that can help Vaidyas, that can help Ayurveda? That is the question. So we have pre-existing core knowledge. We incorporate in design for data collection. We can document those observations in the field of the formal studies. We can confirm or refute the assumptions and identify conditional truths. We can then redefine the core or the fixed knowledge and identify transdisciplinary interface. So these are the possibilities with Ayurvedic research for 2030, in the next decade or 2 decades. This is possible for us to do. Now, this might seem abstract for us, so I'm laying it down a little bit more in detail. So you say that, for example, you have tools for semi-quantification of qualitative information. Whatever we are subjectively assessing, we can create tools that can be semi-quantitatively capturing that data or information. And what is not semi-quantitative can remain qualitative. But as much as possible, we can put many of the aspects of Ayurveda in a semi-quantitative fold. Then we create an open source technology to support its global use for documentation. We create then we can arrive upon therapeutic outcomes for whole system interventions, not individuals, but whole system interventions that are occurring in the clinic. From this data, we can identify signals through multiple data analytic approaches. And then we can consolidate those signals through structured clinical studies in academic settings where we define the boundary conditions and help to amplify the signals. What all of this can do is that it can help to provide, there is a possibility that we can provide a point of care, real-time information to Vaidyas who are practicing anywhere. So what kind of information am I talking about? So I created a dream scenario. And the example for this would be, there is a patient of Parkinson's disease who comes to a Vaidya. He is choosing what intervention to give. And suppose he has decided that he's going to give a Basti treatment. You can say 65%, he can find information, for example, like this, that 65% of the patients with Parkinson's disease with bradykinesia as a predominant symptom, with a tendency of constipation and a relatively Naran state, they respond significantly to Mashadi Ter Basti. And there is an X% improvement in some symptom and not much difference in these other symptoms. He can have that information beforehand. Is this too much? Is this like a dream? It is a dream, but it is possible to put it together. The information, and you can also have an underlying statement said that this information is based on 400 patients who were treated in India, Germany, and US. Can you imagine such a situation? Would you be excited to have such an information with you when you are making your clinical suggestions? You would feel confident and so backed by the support of what is there. And that confidence will help to have other ramifications. Is this feasible? It's feasible through different models, through different aspects. There is one aspect of science and technology, and there's a second aspect of incentives. So there are details that can be worked out. The details of this can be worked out because the science in the underbelly is ready and it is waiting. The technology is also ready and waiting. We just need leadership to steer and put it together. So Dr. Soumik Raha has also another unpublished paper on how to put those Bayesian models in an Ayurvedic setting. And how are we going to be able to create something what he calls as a continuous updated therapy, which uses the Bayesian models. We can also have a good outcome analysis by seeing what is clinical significance versus statistical significance. We can use whole system medicine tools. And nowadays there's a lot of AI and machine learning and input strategies. And the burden of the documentation and data collection does not necessarily have to be on the Vaidya or the medical institution alone. Things have moved significantly in the last 5 to 6 years. What are the incentives for people to do this? Why should people share? So I put some thoughts together. I don't want to get into the details of this, but incentives are there. They can be created. From all of this part of the information and the data and the clinical interface, that is the part which is the peripheral, always updating aspect of Ayurvedic medicine, because it's the products, it's the practice, right? However, there are some truths, some parts of Ayurvedic medicine which are the core truths, which are universal knowledge, which are captured in sutras. So not all of Ayurveda has the same truth quotient. Not all the shlokas in Ayurveda have the same truth quotient as the sutras, because a sutra is different from a shloka. How is a sutra different from a shloka? Because it is alpaksharam, it is brief, it is asandigdham. There is no ambiguity. It's devoid of ambiguity. It is saravad. It has the essence of the key ideas. And Vishvatommukham, it has multiple applications. So it's a very potent visualization of the truth, and a very applicable visualization of the truth. It is perfect without any gross errors, and it is appropriate beyond any reproach. Anavadyam. There are ways to test whether a shloka is a sutra. And that Dr. Vaidya suggested to use falsifiability, which is beyond deductive reasoning and beyond inductive reasoning, beyond Bayesian models, to test whether a statement is true or not. So if you have a statement like all swans are white, but if you see one black swan, that statement needs to be updated. right? That statement is not true. And you can create a new statement which will be true in all conditions. So the new statement can be all swans are white, or most swans are white and some are black, and that can be the new truth. But what is the truth? And you identify that, and you accept it, and those aspects need to be not questioned, and just not, we don't need to study them repeatedly, and they can just be a part of our fixed formats. So we use the tool of salt causes hyperacidity, that excessive salt, lavanasya ati matrena amlapittam janayati, that is an associative sutra. Is this true? How true is this? Is this a universal statement? And if it is a universal statement, why is it not a part of every Vaidya's and every person's advice for anybody with hyperacidity? So if you see this statement, there is a clinical study that was done because somebody observed that, when they went salt-free for their cold, their hyperacidity also reduced. And in 1969, they did a study to see what was the impact of salt on gastric acid secretion. And when they did that, they found that the gastric acid secretion really reduced. And then there were a lot of hypotheses around why that might be occurring. But 16 out of the 18 patients had dropped gastric acid output. When I studied this a little bit more back then, I found that sodium chloride increases the virulence of H. pylori, which is now associated to be, it's associated in the condition very frequently. You find very frequently H. pylori causing hyperacidity situations and causing gastric erosions and maybe even ulcers. Okay, so there are a lot of studies that show that. And when you put things together, you say epidemiologically in the Japanese populations, I found that there was increased salt intake, have more instances of gastritis and gastric ulcers. There were many other clinical observations that I've put down together. Experiments in humans shown that there seems to be a relationship. In vivo studies show that gastrin, which helps to increase gastric acid secretion, it is increased with salt. And in vitro studies with H. pylori and all also showed that. So multiple levels of biological organization, you find the same kind of indication. So when we find such association and we see them at different levels, the truth quotient of those statements increases. And this is what allows us to go from a reductionist model to a holistic model. These kind of studies and these kind of observations can lead to potential transdisciplinary impact. I'm just going to read one or two of these statements that, okay, if sodium chloride is doing this, do all kinds of salts have a similar effect on gastric acid secretion? Does salt affect the mucosal layer in the stomach? What are the additional consequences or impact of such observations? When you ask those questions, you might be able to find newer associations and relationships that are relevant in diverse other conditions as well. And when you put these things together, while going back to my slides, I found again Dr. Vaidya's slide, and I feel that this is such a potent slide. And now I understand it so much better as to what Dr. Vaidya has put together. And he tried to offer different kinds of validities and different modes of science and math that can be applied to aspects of Ayurveda. such that we are able to create a very solid mathematical base for for the validity of an entire system, such that it can lead to a lot of transdisciplinary impact. Okay, so he talked about documenting hetu, or documentation processes like the ones that I detailed right now. That time he used Bayesian theorem for it. At that time, I did not understand what Bayesian theorem really meant. What could it do? But now, after 15 years of practice and understanding with Somik's work and following Dr. Somik's work and seeing the possibilities of it, it makes so much sense. Similarly, there were suggestions on all of the other areas and disciplines. And I hope that we are able to visit them and educate ourselves with these possibilities before we spend effort in creating new age research for Ayurveda. I believe that the Council for Ayurveda Research is providing such amazing leadership, being here based in the United States. And I'm sure that people from India will look up to the signals that are generated from here. And therefore, the Council for Ayurveda Research bears that responsibility of steering all of us in the right direction. At the heart of this pursuit for research, it is a spirit of inquiry. It's a spirit of science. And being in a science mode is different from being in a Vaidya mode. And the science mode can be got easily in your mind space by this poem. I used to love it. At some time, do beyond this talk, do revisit it. Broken Images by Robert Frost. It says, he is quick thinking in clear images. I'm slow thinking in broken images. He becomes dull, trusting his clear images. I become sharp, mistrusting my broken images. Trusting his images, he assumes their relevance. Mistrusting my images, I question their relevance. Assuming their relevance, he assumes the fact. Questioning their relevance, I question the fact. When the fact fails him, he questions his senses. When the fact fails me, I approve my senses. He continues quick and dull in his clear images. I continue slow and sharp in my broken images. He in a new confusion of his understanding, I in a new understanding of my confusion. So with that, I end my talk, and I hope that we are able to steer away from this predicament by this cartoon that captures the plight of science so nicely, where it says, it's a rather interesting phenomenon. Every time I press this lever, that postgraduate student, he breathes a sigh of relief. I hope you get that. And with that light note, I wish all of you a wonderful World Ayurveda Day and a World Ayurveda Week and a happy Diwali coming up. Thank you for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Namyata. It was a wonderful presentation, and I really love the way you folded it up, ended it up, like the science and philosophy, and that what exactly the essence of Ayurveda is. And I see that Dr. Madan is here and Dr. Pratibha, so I would open this session for discussion. And I don't see there are any questions, or maybe if I'm missing something. Over to you, Dr. Pratibha. Unmute yourself, please.
I think I'll invite Dr. Madan to share impressions.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Greetings from Cambridge, UK. Thanks, Namyata, for inviting me to join you here. Namyata is very special to us. She was one of the 15 Vaidya scientists in the first Vaidya scientist program that ran out of the Transdisciplinary University in Bangalore with Ashok Vaidya as one of our, the creator of the program. And that was a very valuable program where we brought together trained Vaidyas and to start thinking in the modern biology and the modern science way. And Namyata has shown us here in her talk the spirit that continues. I also noticed from your website that one of our Vaidya scientists is in Canada.
Ranjini.
Sri Ranjini.
Yes, Sri Ranjini, and she was also presenting to you. And Girish Thilu is there in Pune. So we have a collection of Vaidya scientists who are still committed to this work and doing a lot of science.
Kishore also.
Patwardhan is there as professor in BHU. And the spirit continues. Ashok, we have Anand Shashikumar in Government Ayurveda College in Trivandrum. So Namyata has the list of all these people. The point that comes through to me is what Namyata crystallized very nicely as the Shloka Sutra difference, which is a very important thing because all of these, all of Ayurveda and the Indian sciences, the traditional sciences as we call, are based on axiomatic foundations. So for me, there are 2 or 3 or 4 very, very special. I start with my favorite, which is Sankhya Darshana, and the 68 sutras that are given to us by Kapila 68 sutras. Now, similarly, when we go into Vaisheshika, you have Kannada's text from Vaisheshika sutras. And you come into yoga, we have Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and we come into Nyaya, we have. And if you take as little as those 4, you can see the basis that holds all these sciences up. And somehow I feel the people who are coming into it are missing out on the darshanas. And we must revisit the darshanas and we must try and capture the essence of the darshanas. This is very important. Ashokji would always say that in Ayurveda, sample size is always 1. And you can, when we go into the world of, and the Ayurveda offers you the logic for how to analyze sample size 1. It gives you the Prakriti concept. It tells you how to use the concept of Prakriti to understand a sample size of 1. And when you go into the world of Vaisheshika, it says all dravyas are, there are only 9 dravyas, all are reducible down to 9. Now, this is lost, all these principles are lost somewhere in our investigations. We seem to get too caught up in the Western medical paradigm that Namyata presented very nicely in one of her slides. So is this gap that cannot be bridged, or is this something we can still cross? My feeling is that this is a bridge that can be crossed. And the principles that come out of the darshanas are so deep and so fine that they are able to contain everything that modern sciences offer us. So you can contain all of modern sciences based on the axiomatic foundations of the darshanas. So it's a challenge for us to find an excuse whenever we have discussions like this to draw the audience towards the darshanas. And Namyata touches on it briefly, but to take people deep into the darshanas, that means go into the text, pull out those sutras and show what it means in terms of modern modern biology, modern physics. So one aspect I always say, I've shared this with Namyata, she seems to have forgotten it. At a time when I was still a newcomer to Ayurveda, I'm still a newcomer to Ayurveda. Namyata, once in a conversation in Bangalore, we were there at the Vaidya Scientist program, and she was saying, yes, at the end of the day, everything reduces to the Mahagunas, which is still the case. I now engage with Vaidyas in Jaipur, and they are treating Parkinson's conditions on a guna-based chikitsa. Now, this is very exciting to see how their mind works, or how you look at a patient and you look at sthir-guna or chal-guna, and you use that logic to do your treatment. And Namyata knows this. She has it all in her mind. It will come out at some point when we go into discussions. The other thing I find very exciting is the Vimshati Gunas and the concept of opposites there, and that are open to our senses. And I have used this more, I use it more and more frequently in the context of this ongoing COVID crisis. When you look at our samhitas, the samhitas are talking about using katu tikta rasa for some aspect of, you use ruchi, or you use kalame, or something like that, which are very bitter principles. Now, what is the reason for these bitter principles? Now, according to Ayurveda, the bitterness is reducible to the Panjabhutic state. So they go into an approach of analyzing bitter using another matrix. So they take the Shadrasa and they convert the Shadrasa into the Panjabhuta matrix, and then they manipulate all that, and they say you can change the gunas, you can change the doshas, doshic attributes based on this matrix. And it's such a beautiful matrix. So on one hand, you have Shadrasa, on the other hand, you have Tridosha on the top, and you have Panjabhuta. And you can see all the matrix. It is so consistent. It's almost like the genetic code. So you can use those principles, and you'll suddenly see that they understood this differently. Using Panjabhutic principles, they could arrive at aspects of Bala. Now, this, if you are, it throws you. Initially, it throws you. You say, what the hell is happening here? No. You've got 6 states, and you've got 3 doshas, and you've got Panjabhutas. How is all this connected together? In fact, it's such an elegant matrix. It is error-free because it's axiomatic in its foundations. You cannot go wrong with that. You can just follow it blindly, and it will always work. Now, that is on one side, what Namyata touched on in one of her slides. You just follow this blindly, don't ask any questions. And people who don't know that it's founded on such axiomatic principles will find this confusing. Right. They can't believe this. So this is the bridge that we need to make. And the way I have done this recently with this COVID thing is by saying, okay, take the bitter principle and then look in modern biology about how bitter principle works. And we'll see, it's a very simplistic explanation. You take the bitter principle, it goes into the bitter, how do you sense the bitterness? So the human anatomy has bitter receptors. So that is clear. There's no confusion. The human genome tells you how many bitter receptors there are. Cell biology tells you where the bitter receptors are located. And suddenly the whole thing makes sense. Because when you look at where the bitter receptors are located, you will find them in all those spaces where you see physiological activity. So if you follow bitter receptors starting with your oral cavity and all the nasopharyngeal cavity and going all the way down to the lung, you will see bitter receptors all the way. And you will see bitter receptors deep in your lung on ciliated cells, which are the cells that are flushing mucus out of the lung outwards. So Ayurveda says that the bitter receptor controls the 3 gunas, and or the bitter principle controls the 3 gunas, and that's how the physiology works. when you go into the cell biology and go through the bitter receptor route, that is exactly what you see. You see just that. You add the bitter principle, it increases the beating of the cilia. And you push more things out of the lung. So there are bridges that can be made of this kind. And I think the challenge in our discussions is to bring those deep ideas also. And then we find many more people who will join our dialogue. And finally, one last area that I want to touch on, I talked about Avyakt, the principle that is very special to Sankhya. Avyakt is very important, and the concept of Avyakt goes into the world of modern physics and understanding the subtle energy. In yoga, we talk about the nadis and the chakras, and yoga comes to it by saying we can manipulate physiology based on nadis and chakras and all these things. And we have 72,000. Shaiva Siddhanta says you have 72,000 nadis in the body, but how the hell does this work? What are these? What is this prana? What is this energy stuff that's flowing through the body and that keeps the system alive? What is the physics of this stuff? What is the mathematics of this stuff? And when we go into Avyakt and then we come out of Avyakt, you suddenly see all the principles in operation.
Yes.
That there is a way in which these things work. There is a way in which the body is organized, and there is a way in which energy flows, directionality of things. So these are areas that I hope we can bring into play when we are in discussions, wherever those discussions are. You will see on the back here a little logo for an organization that we have set up in Kerala. It's called the Ayush Valley Foundation. Ayush, our website is ayushvalley.org. And you will find it very easily on your Google search if you do Ayush Valley Foundation. Our idea there is to look at the entire Ayush systems in its entirety. So not just Ayurveda, but all the other systems. And I use this example where we have Unani systems. Let us say Unani systems have been claiming prophylactic for COVID-19, a very old formulation called Arke Azib. Namyata, please.
So, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to share that, you know, all of these from, you know, the Ayurvedic cybernetics and the details of the philosophy where it stems from. It is a journey that we have to take in through science, that we need to sort of figure a way out that from the medical and the health domain, how do we walk towards this? And how do we walk towards this as a community together? And I think that is the interface where we've chosen to sort of remain at, because some of these details suddenly they feel so abstract and obscure to people who are not plugged in that they will run away. And the idea is that we want to keep people together and keep them hooked. So that's been some of the conditions. And of course, then steering towards, Ayush Valley and all of those principles, and having institutions that share those principles, that's the ultimate hope. So Pratibha ji, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Did you want to conclude your remarks?
If I may, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Pratibha. What I was saying is that when we go into understanding the sutras, and particularly rich concepts like Avyakt, or rich concepts from yoga, the second verse of yoga saying, Chitta Vritta Nirodha. So what is this thing called Chitta? What is this vritti of Chitta? You then have to understand the fundamental principles. You have to go to the fundamental principles. You have to go to Avyakt, and you've got to come out from Avyakt. So the message I always give people is that every moment of your existence and every question that you ask, your journey begins in Avyakt. So every breath is a journey that begins in Avyakt. to where we are now. And the same when we come to understanding Rasapanchaka, you go to Avyakt, and then you come out to understand. You go back not just to the three Mahagunas, all the way to Avyakt. And then you come out with every question. So this kind of logic needs to come out. And when I do this, I see how the so-called Ayush systems are held together. I understand questions like what Namyata was just offering about salt. I understand the concept of Panchalavana, for instance. Lavana is there, but somewhere in the text, Panchalavana is described. How do these things work? Kala Namak is different from. And these principles, that sensitivity to these issues just comes out in me. And how do you translate this to people in Stanford or in Berkeley or in Harvard or in MIT or in any of the schools there in America? I'm so happy that you people are there to hold the fort. And what we would like to do is to do a journey back to a place which is your home. And we felt that Kerala provides a good home for this. Right. There are practitioners across the length and breadth of the state. Definitely. There are families that have had 17, 18 generations of practice in Ashtanga Hridaya. They understand. There are, even today, you can find youngsters who will recite the entire Ashtanga Hridaya from beginning to end, entire thing. They don't have any problems, young people. Right. And there is a collection of other practices, Siddha practices there, Unani practices there, homeopathy is very popular, and Siddha medicine is there. So we felt that was a good place. And we will hold the fort there. And we would look to you people to take this message out to other parts of the world while we kind of consolidate our position down in India. So very happy to be here with all of you. And delighted, thanks to Namyata last minute. She said, will you join us? I'm happy to be here with everybody. So thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. I'll take your number from Nami and I'll probably say a hello to you so that I can connect with you directly as well.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yes. Nami, you want to say something?
I wanted to tell Sir and everyone who is listening until now is that I have been singing Adi Shankaracharya's Prata Smarami Riddhi Spradatma Tattvam to my daughter every day to remind myself of Avyakt and to teach her about Avyakta. It's a very beautiful, beautiful composition that puts me in a good, happy state. So
very nice, very
nice. The home of the Ayush Valley is in a place called Shodnur. And Shodnur has an old Ayurveda institution called the Kerala Ayurveda Samajam. And that is about 127, 28-year-old establishment. That is, as far as we know, the first Ayurveda clinic, hospital in the world. And this was set up by the Maharaja.
I will definitely look it up.
We will learn about it, sir, and we will connect.
We will connect, and it was the history, if I may take a few seconds, was set up by the Maharaja of Cochin. And the reason why the Maharaja set this up was he felt bad that the Vaidya in the community was taken away from the community into the palace when somebody in the palace needed attention. And there was no more Vaidya in the community. So he said, this is not good. I'm going to set up a hospital where I can come and stay in the community. And the Vaidya will stay in the community. And thus form the Ayush, the Shodnur's Kerala Ayurveda Samajam. So we are delighted that Namyata, number one, Namyata is there, very active. She's still energetic as the Vaidya scientist spirit, carrying it on. Delighted that she's introduced me to the group today. Thank you very much for having me. And delighted that I have had a chance to introduce the Ayush Valley to all of you.
I would love to visit in my next visit to India.
Thank you.
I would definitely love to visit.
We
Yes.
look forward to connecting with yourself. We have a number of events that are going on. And I hope our next is, we have a series called Harm Talk. And the next Harm Talk it's held on the first Sunday of every month. The next one will be the first Sunday of December. And then starting January, Dr. Arvind Kulkarni from Vagoli in Pune will be joining us, and he will be running a show on cancer, integrative approaches in cancer.
Please share the details. I would love to send you an email as well as WhatsApp, and I would love to share with our board as well.
Thank you so much.
But thank you so much. This is, this has been an opportunity to connect with you directly. I know we are on some WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp groups, I know that, but lovely to connect. And Nami, excellent presentation. It was very interesting to see Mr. Robert Frost has written a perfect poem for us. I think everybody is talking about interfacing language. I think back then he has written perfectly what we need to articulate right now. So thank you for sharing that. I also teach for 2 institutions here, and in my recent class, there were 2 things that I was saying which are very aligned with today's topic and direction of conversation. That we have to unlearn the conditioned learning which we have received in the university setup, because we are schooled to think in a certain way and schooled to accept what is true in a certain way. And we have to unschool that, and then with a blank slate, revisit the expanse that we have the honor and privilege of owning. And second thing I always say is that Ayurvedic principles and modern principles are not confrontational. In fact, Ayurvedic principles are like a cloud, and that's exactly the word I have been using recently. They're like a cloud, and the modern medicine or other principles fall under that large cloud. And that cloud format actually fits better to the complexity of the human entity, not a linear restricted entity or an approach like what we have in modern medicine. So this is wonderful. I love how you put it together, Nami, and that's a very interesting as well as very relevant sort of direction that you are proposing or highlighting. I think we are all coming together onto that track slowly but surely, that there is something much more than what modern medicine or in the name of science is being proposed to us. There is much more than that. And I have been saying in my so many other talks here and there that we are somehow feeling a compulsion to align with modern scientific approach. And we are forgetting that in Ayurveda, Roga is not what is at the center. It is the Rogi that is at the center, and we don't have to really look at proving everything at the biomolecule level. We have to look at the complex receptors, or how the human entity interfaces with what goes in. Is the response to spinach the same as elemental iron? No. So why are we even looking at that? And I loved your slides, which are sort of, aligned also. So I think we're all in our own ways trying to bring that in. And that's, thank you. I'll copy paste from there. But this is really, really timely. And Madanji, we are dedicated to this. This is something I had conceived in 2012, and slowly but surely we are beginning to churn out very meaningful get-togethers, I can say. I'm very delighted to say that Ashok Vaidya ji is a big blesser of Council for Ayurveda Research. In fact, the name of our India entity was proposed by him. Ayurveda Anusandhan Abhiyan Foundation, which is a Section 8 NGO as of 2019. And Darshan Shankarji and everybody is in our sort of circle of advisors and well-wishers. So I think it's a very good time for all people from all across the globe. I think one thing COVID-19 has done very good is that it has brought people who normally may not have connected, bringing them together. And I think with all the purposeful efforts that every one of us seems to be making in our own areas of influence, I think ultimately that will uplift Ayurveda to the pedestal it deserves. I think because I think it is Amrit for humanity. Just even if we pick up just the Dinacharya, just the Swastha Vrita, I think that itself is like Amrit to humanity, which is parched right now. And this, even little nuggets from Ayurveda can be Amrit. So very timely. Thank you so much. A very good presentation and lovely to connect with you, Madanji. Very nice thoughts. I liked your.
I want to share one thing about Madan sir with you, Pratibhaji. Madan sir, I know him for almost 10 years now. Recently, we've not interacted much, but his presence in meetings and his presence in meetings in India and all over Europe for all of these conversations at the highest level, his presence is a rishi presence.
How nice.
And I really feel that he finds this sublime, the sublime aspects and the patience that he brings to the conversation, and he connects everyone. So like how, you have such great leadership with CAR, and it's wonderful. And Madan sir has different connections in Europe. So a lot of exchange is hopefully possible, and extension of CAR in Europe as well.
Definitely. I'm actually looking forward to, unfortunately, I have not learned of him earlier. And that is why somehow Madanji, your chat is not getting copy pasted.
I will send it. Namyata has my details.
Nami, you send please, because it's not getting pasted, it's getting copied. But anyway, so thank you so much. And Madanji will be inviting you on our CAR platforms as well, because Nami knows I'm actually extremely selective. No offense to anybody, but we try to bring in voices that can give the right kind of influence and right kind of example.
Pratibhaji, thank you so much. I just want to add that we have an activity in India. We are connecting with many universities, organizations in India. In Europe too, we have a big network, the European Ayurveda Association, etc. And we held the second European World Ayurveda Congress in 2016 in Koblenz. There's a big network evolving across the Baltic countries. So India has a center now in Riga at the University of Latvia. And I think we should all come together.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to give you a call and pick your brain how we can do that. And please do join us on Friday, Madanji, if you have time. We have the ambassador gracing the occasion. I think this is the very first time in US, because I'm ex-Ayush. I'm actually a batchmate of Katoch and Nesri. We are from the same UPSC batch. 12 of us were selected all over India. So, I'm 13 years I was there. I was chief medical officer. So my goal is, I always try to look at the bigger picture, how can we bring the governments also to get a little more, invested and interested. So the ambassador is coming, I think for the very first time, ambassador is going to be gracing an Ayurvedic event. I don't think it has happened before.
We have so many wonderful things happening here in London. We have High Commissioner Kumar. She was
I saw some of the things. Yes,
she was ambassador in Brussels, and we held 2 events in the European Parliament. Now she's here in London. I just have a message from Dr. Paul, who was in Geneva and is now, last week, he's taken appointment as High Commissioner in Nairobi. And so he's come with a message today saying, can you come to us in Nairobi to do a short presentation on Friday the 13th.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
Friday is a very special day for all of us. And we are wonderfully networked, So accident or design.
There are no accidents. There are no accidents. This was meant to be.
Madan sir, I was like, I have really wanted to talk to him, and I messaged him, and he was there. He's like, I'm coming.
Lovely, lovely. I must also share with you that last year I was part of the 6-member core group that brought about the World Ayurveda Day. With Sudarshan and Ram Manohar ji and Pratap Chauhan ji and all. So we were 6 who did it last year. And this year, it's lovely to see it's more than 75 plus countries and whatnot. It's really taken on. So we are also doing this on that platform itself, the 5-day lecture series in India and US. So this is the 3rd day, successfully conducted, 3 in India, 3 here. Tomorrow is the 4th, and then Friday is special. So yes, we are also, trying to gear up and use this day to promote, propagate, and at least raise awareness in all levels of the society, lay people, medical people, etc.
This is a wonderful movement. Thank you so much for having me here.
No. Our pleasure, our honor, and I think this is meant to be. I'm already sensing more strength and more momentum. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you one-on-one once this is over next week sometime.
And thanks to Namyata.
Thanks to Namyata.
Because without her...
I'm going to call you back again too. So we have to connect.
Namaste.
All right. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vandana. Thank you so much.
I would like to announce it has been such a profound discussion today, and I am really so enlightening, and I'm very happy to meet you, and thank you, Dr. Namyata, for bringing him. It has brought a new dimension to our discussion and some future projects as well. And I'm seeing bright things, only bright things. And thank you very much, sir, for joining us and sharing your thoughts.
Rishi presence, right? The Avyakta Rishi presence.
Rishi presence, yes. Avyakta Rishi presence, absolutely. And I would like to announce our tomorrow's speaker, Diana Lurie, and she is going to talk about intersections of Ayurveda and circadian rhythm. So
right,
if you are interested, sir, it's the same time, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. EST. Yes. So if you can join us.
And we also have Dr. Hetal Shah, who is from the other side of the medicine. But thank you, Dr. Hetal, for attending. All right. Thank you for all the attendees on the Facebook Live as well.
There are no questions there, right?
I doubt it, and we are way beyond our time. So actually, I also have to get on a call.
Yes. I was just wondering about that. But that's it. Okay.
We'll take that in the comments. You can respond there.
Yes, I checked the comment box. I couldn't find anything. So we are good here.
We are good.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much again. Everyone. Pleasure and happy Dhanvantari Day if we don't connect before that.
Thank you. Namaste.
And happy Diwali too, sir.
Happy Diwali.
Namaskar.
Thank you, Vandana. Namaste.
Namaste.